Welcome everybody to this week's podcast. Recently, I've been doing a lot of work and seeing a lot of interesting news coming out of Melbourne. And I've been saying a lot that I believe that Melbourne is one of the most undervalued markets in Australia and represents some of the best value in Australia. It's a funny market. During COVID, they lost about 30,000 people. They all fled and went to Brisbane for the warmer weather and for affordability. And then coming out of COVID, it really didn't recover the same ways that the other markets did. We saw Brisbane grow by 30, 40%. Sydney market grew by 25 to 30%. Everybody rocketed off to success, but Melbourne kind of grew a little bit and not as much as we expected. And this is largely due because it was a bit of a hangover, let's say, a hangover after COVID. But what we're seeing going into the future is some really interesting facts. There's a severe undersupply of property. And if you have a look at there's about 700,000 migrants coming into the country. The two big winners of that migration is Sydney and then Melbourne. Now, before they recently redrew the lines, Melbourne was on track to be bigger than Sydney by 2031. They moved some of the lines for Melbourne City, so now it's officially bigger than Sydney. But I see a tremendous amount of value in the Melbourne market. So in today's podcast, I want to get a Melbourne expert. So I want to introduce you all to Nurit, a visionary in Melbourne's real estate industry. In the dynamic world of Melbourne real estate, there are few individuals who possess the diverse range of skills and experience as Nirit. She is a highly accomplished professional who has excelled in various sectors of the industry, including property management, marketing, sales, and business development. With an impressive career spanning almost 20 years, she has made significant contributions to Motion Properties' remarkable growth and its reputation as a leading force in the industry. Today, she is the director of Motion Property and has played a vital role in the successful launch and promotion of numerous buildings around the metropolitan Melbourne. Her exceptional leadership and skills and dedication have been instrumental in Motion Properties' thriving presence, making them the foremost real estate market experts in Melbourne. So today, I have a great pleasure of introducing Nirit. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Dom. That's a really generous introduction, so I appreciate it.
Well, not enough.
Happy to be here.
You and I have been doing a lot of work together, and it's all well and good to do market research from CoreLogic data, to sit and be a desktop jockey, but there's nothing quite like hearing it from the agents on the ground. You and your team have been doing this for years and years and years. You've launched many projects, as we said, and now you're working with vendors, people that own the property, with incoming tenants and landlords. So I'm very interested to hear from you. What are you seeing, experiencing, and feeling on the ground that the data isn't quite telling us? Is what we're seeing from the computer validating what you're seeing on the ground?
A lot of what you're seeing and the reports that are coming out of Melbourne are very accurate. Our property management side of our business, we mostly are dealing in apartments and townhomes. And I think that that's a really big caveat to put on my perspective of what's happening in the Melbourne market. It's very different to houses out in the suburbs or house and land. It is very much townhomes, apartments, with a small proportion of our portfolio being houses. So my perspective is a little bit skewed. But by all accounts, the Melbourne market in the rental side of things is extremely strong. Inner city properties are vacant at the moment for an average of 4 days. So vacancy is extremely low. Just before I hopped online, I had a look. We have 2,300 rental properties on our books. We have 18 currently vacant. That's a 0.007% vacancy rate. I think Melbourne overall is at 0.8%. So we're even lower than that. We're seeing a really big influx of students coming in, international migration. A lot of people who left Melbourne, as you mentioned, to go to Byron and the Gold Coast are coming back. I think they've realised that it's not necessarily all it's cracked up to be. So we are seeing an influx of people coming back into the market. And as such, the rental market in Melbourne is very strong, with really high growths in our rents as well. So most of our landlords are seeing returns of 10% year on year increase. Some markets like Melbourne CBD is sitting close to 20% from where it was a year ago, and continuously growing month by month.
That's huge, and that's really good anecdotal evidence. Not anecdotal, it's primary evidence. You've got 2,000 plus managements, largely apartments and townhomes, and you've seen for some of these vendors or these landlords 10-20% price increases, and it's interesting to hear that. Largely, we hear that it's a lot of students and migrants coming in, and you're experiencing that. So these are the types of people that are actually renting the properties. And how are they absorbing these rents? Is it kind of like it is what it is? Is there much of a resistance? And do you see the market moving much more than where it has today?
Absolutely. I think we're predicting Melbourne to continue increasing 10% on average year on year, probably for the next 5 years. The rents, the demographic of the people living in these apartments are slightly changing. So you are seeing a lot more international students during our COVID and pandemic sort of period. We had a lot more locals who may have been living in outer Melbourne coming and having a go living in the city because it was a lot more affordable. You got to remember, though, with unemployment as low as it is, and we're seeing it within our team as well, our demographic of renters are very well paid. They all have very stable jobs, and they are absorbing the rent increases. Some of our renters have had $100 to $150 a week increases in rent to bring them up to market. Many have opted to leave, but majority are staying on and absorbing the costs.
So you're projecting a 10% rental increase year on year for the next 5 years.
I believe so.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, regardless, if it's 5%, it's still extraordinary, but 5 to 10% year on year. Can you talk about some of the markets where you believe that you're going to see these increases, and what types of property and why?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a bit of a flow-on effect. So what you've got is a shortage of new properties being built. And I'm not sure how much your audience knows about what's happening in the construction pipeline. So new properties across from everything from house and land to new projects are the pipeline is dropping, and there's less and less new properties coming on the market. So you've got a population growth with the fact that you don't have enough new properties coming on. On top of that, with affordability and everything going on in the housing space, a lot of people are opting to live in apartments, whether they're buying, whether they're renting. It's a lot more common now for people to accept the fact that they may not be buying a house or living in a house, and they're better off being in an inner city area with good infrastructure and good amenity, and be in either an apartment or a townhome than be out further out, where at the moment, a lot of businesses are asking people to come back to work in the offices. So between those two things, along with all the students that are coming back and just the migration, there is a high demand for properties anywhere within inner Melbourne. And I think what is happening as people are being...
Sorry, what's inner Melbourne? Sorry to interrupt you. When you're saying inner Melbourne, because people listening are thinking, where do what should I go and buy? And like, where are you renting these properties that you think that we're going to see the most growth? Feel free to be specific.
I usually, inner Melbourne to me is sort of 10 to 15 kilometre ring of the CBD. To me, that's inner Melbourne. Obviously, we're looking for areas that have good infrastructure, whether it's public transport, hospitals, roads and freeways. Those are the areas that are doing really well. So it doesn't actually matter whether we're talking about Reservoir, Coburg or Elstonwick or in inner Melbourne in the CBD. What is happening though is that as prices are increasing, more and more people are looking at the outer suburbs, like even Footscray and out as far as, past Footscray into the west, to be able to get more affordability. So what that's doing is just driving that demand, and what we're seeing in inner, like the CBD, out into the suburbs. So that's what's happening at the moment. We're seeing a lot of the international students who are coming cashed up with a lot more money, able to take on these apartments at higher rents and driving the locals a little bit further out.
Interesting. So what you're talking about is urban sprawl, but from a rental perspective. The international students are coming in, they've cashed up, they're renting up apartments close to all the amenity, the schools and universities and colleges. And then that's driving the local renters further away from where they'd ordinarily be because they're not prepared to absorb the $100-$150 rental increase.
And what's making it worse is that we are also, you talk about supply, and it's not just in the new project stock. It's the fact that every property, as interest rates are going up, some of our landlords have opted to sell their properties, and we're seeing them go to first home buyers. So you've got renters who are saying, well, I may as well just buy a property instead of renting and paying these ridiculous prices in rent. So all of a sudden, a lot of the investment stock is not being resold to investors. It's being sold to first home buyers, again, causing even more of a supply issue in the market. We also have landlords who, due to interest rates, are looking for better returns and are trying to be a little bit more savvy in what they can get for their properties, and are taking it off this traditional long-term rental market and turning them into Airbnbs. And so again, another stream of properties are going. So there is a real shortage of properties in Melbourne, and I think it's just going to become worse before it becomes better. And the only way to fix it is to have more investors hit the market and buy more properties.
So you think that the biggest opportunities for rental growth, as far as you can see with your office, and you guys specialize, or your team specializes in Melbourne metro areas, is the apartments, townhomes 15 kilometers from the city, and it kind of doesn't matter which north, east, west, which direction, keeping it close to the CBD. Because I remember for a while, and you'll remember this, you've been around a little while, that Melbourne CBD, Melbourne apartments has been the big no-no for investors for a long time. And there was that massive glut, the huge amount of supply that came onto the market in South Bank. And has that all been absorbed? And are those properties all rented out? What's going on for the renters?
All being absorbed. Again, the biggest supply of new construction is in Melbourne CBD and South Bank, or more so CBD. So yes, that area is still getting some growth in development, but they are very highly priced. So we're talking now about if you're buying into the CBD, you're spending a lot more on apartments. We just leased a $1.2 million 2-bedroom apartment in the city, which is now very acceptable to spend over $1 million on an apartment. And so the rents are a lot higher as well. So in terms of the supply, Melbourne is no longer, to me, I think it's still a great investment. It's not cheap anymore to buy in the city. And there's certainly not a lack of people who want to live in the city and are willing to pay for the convenience.
Because you couldn't give an apartment away a little while ago. 2 bedrooms are what, 600K, 650 or 700, and now they're 1.2.
Absolutely. And that's true. I mean, I had an apartment in the CBD, and it was probably sitting on the same price that I paid for it for probably about 8 years. And I recently sold it and at a much higher return, because I think people are now seeing the value of being in the city. And it is still, I believe it's got a lot of value in it, especially when you compare it to Sydney, which is probably our closest competitor, Sydney and Canberra.
Yeah. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what markets you see the most opportunity. So for everyone listening and watching today, if you were to go and buy a new investment somewhere around Melbourne, where do you think that you're going to see the most rental growth? And try and give us some specific markets that you like, or point us around the map, if you will.
So we really like, again, we've got diversity in our portfolio. I have a very soft spot for Footscray and anything west of Footscray. Again, so anywhere around that Maribyrnong region, to me, I think is still really good value.
Isn't there a bit of a stigma there? And it feels like there's quite a lot of apartments in that spot. Like, what's the value you see there, and why is there a stigma? What's the stigma versus the value? You know what I'm trying to say there?
I mean, there is a stigma, but there is still there's a big demand. I mean, the beautiful thing about the west part of Melbourne, they've still got a lot of way to go in growth, and it's still very affordable compared to if you were looking at Footscray. If you're looking at towards the east, you're never going to get anything like that in value, both to buy or to lease. So areas like Footscray, Maribyrnong, out towards the west are still very good value in Melbourne. I think that is somewhere that I'd look to invest. Towards the north, we've seen massive growths in areas like Reservoir, Coburg, Preston. Those areas are still growing, both again in both sales and rental values. But to me, those are probably my favorite two areas at the moment. But it really is about what you're buying. And so you can have two properties that are identical in location, and they're very different in the demand and what people want out of them. So I think it's really important to look at that.
What are the big differences between the two properties that you see?
If you're looking at the rental side of things as an investor and you're looking where's going to get you better returns, you've got to look, if you're looking at an apartment, you've got to look at the overall apartment, what renters are wanting at the moment. And that's all about the facilities, the amenity, the ease and also the security within the building itself. So you've got to be able to choose a build. It's a bit of a funny one, because you want to be able to choose a building that has all the amenity and the facilities for your renters, that isn't going to charge you a fortune in the owner's corporation fees, because then it's almost not worth it. So there are still a few sweet spots where you can find those sort of apartments. And that's what, when you talk about Footscray, there's an area in Footscray where we manage, I think, over 600 apartments now across different buildings. And there is such a difference in both the selling price and the asking price in rent, just based on the building itself, the facilities, the finishes, and the quality. So, I mean, you can talk about areas, but I think it's more important to look at the actual product and what you're buying.
I like what you're saying there, because you've mentioned the West and the North. I'm a big fan of the West and the North. And what you mentioned is basically from a certain amount of kilometers from the CBD, and you're looking at Footscray, which is what, 3 to 5 kilometers?
5K
and then,
probably.
Yeah, and then Reservoir is what, sort of 10 to 13 kilometers. Coburg's, a little bit further. But so the kilometers from the CBD is a very good metric to judge value in given cities. And if you were to go, 2, 3, 5, 10 kilometers and go east of Melbourne, and you start going towards sort of Brighton and then Sandringham, Hyatt, the prices are just extraordinary. And if you to just compare like for like, there's a huge amount of value if you do go west and if you do go north.
Absolutely.
And if you just look at the donut of Melbourne, it's severely underdeveloped. So I really do believe in the west and the north as well. Having said that, the east is beautiful, and the prices there are what they are, rightfully so. There are some really, really beautiful markets there that are, I think you can pick the eyes out of it, and you can find some really good value in those markets as well. So yeah, I look at the whole of Melbourne. I feel like Melbourne's at a stage where you could throw a dart and basically be okay if you bought something with a good yield over the next 10 years.
100%. And again, as I mentioned, to me, look at areas that have infrastructure in place. If you're close to trains, trams, buses, and the rest of roads and freeways, you're going to be okay. And I really do feel like we're at the bottom of the market at the moment, and the cycle's about to start. If I was looking to invest, I'd be looking to do it before interest rates stabilize, because once those interest rates stabilize, even in that, we had 1 month where they held off on interest rates, and the amount of inquiry we received from people looking to buy property skyrocketed. So we are preparing ourselves that the minute, and they do have to stabilize at some point, interest rate just cannot continue to go up indefinitely. The minute they stabilize, this market is going to go skyrocket as well. It's a really interesting time to be in Melbourne.
That is really, really good insight there, because everyone wants to pick the bottom, but picking the bottom is a dangerous game, and market sentiment turns in a moment. Soon as the RBA says, hey, we're going to put a pause or we're going to decrease rates, market sentiment will shift. And then it will become a buying frenzy.
Absolutely.
I really truly believe that. So paying attention, you want to go out and buy good real estate now while the market is depressed. And I don't even want to say it's depressed, because it actually isn't that depressed. Actually,
no, it's not.
3 consecutive growth months, and there's not a lot of supply, with 25% 5-year averages of listed properties. So it isn't a depressed market, actually.
No.
But rates will continue to increase for the next couple of months, probably. And I wouldn't be holding our breath. I'd be out there looking for good deals. And Melbourne's definitely a market I really, really like. Nurit, I want to ask you a couple of questions. I know we're kind of pressed for time. You're running a big business over there, so thank you. Um, with with the growth of motion property, I'm interested to understand what do you attribute the success of your business to? What have you done in the business that really has allowed it for it to grow and become what it is over 30 years?
I guess we're very lucky. It's a family business, so there has been that DNA in the business, and a legacy of the business that has been going on for since I was a kid. With my dad, who's probably the only actual real estate agent in the family, who used to do auctions and be a traditional real estate agent. But when we started on this journey of building this business, it was really about getting stability into the business in terms of both the cash flow and the way the business is run. And the only way to do that in real estate is to grow the rent roll. So we had a very big focus in building our rent roll. And since 2015, I think we started on about 230 properties on our rent roll. It was very small and conservative, to grow it now to 2,300. It's really all about consistency in our systems and our processes. I think that was one of the first things we did to ensure that we're able to grow and scale. It's looking after your people and understanding their value. We work with a really beautiful team of people. We try very hard to look after them to make sure that they are happy both at work and at life. And I think that then reflects on a really good culture, and that then gets passed on to the client. So I think that consistency is really important. But the most important thing is really working with like-minded people like yourself and a lot of other people in the industry, and being able to leverage off each other's skills and being able to network and build together. And that way we're able to look after your clients along with a whole lot of other people's clients who are also very much focused on the investor mindset. So unlike traditional real estate agents, we really teach our management team here in property management about looking at things like an investor, and how to talk about growth and yield and I guess interest rates and depreciation, because those are the things that are important to any investor in the market. So those things have really helped us build the business to where it is today.
So there's a few things that I really liked. It was identifying in the business where your focus needed to be, and you focused on book value and consistent income. And then building the processes and the procedures to grow that specific part of the business. So that created the solid foundation for you to keep on growing, and then reinvesting your extra equity or cash into the people to make sure that the happy people, happy clients, and then reinvesting again back into the knowledge and understanding what it is we're trying to achieve. And rental properties are effectively investment properties. So understanding the nature of investment. So it's, doubling down on the knowledge and then making sure the people and the information were all consistent. And again, it sounds like working with good people and finding great partners. So there's a lot to learn from that, regardless of what business you're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for you personally, what's changed for you since you started to now? What kind of habits or mindsets have you cultivated for your success?
It's a really tough question. I mean, I'm a very positive person generally. I've always been a very big optimist. I think the things that have changed for me is that I don't really sweat the small stuff as much as I used to. And I've had to learn to look at the big picture stuff and not worry about the things that I'm not going to stress about in a week. And so that's been probably my biggest shift in my mindset, being able to really not worry about all the little stuff, because there's a lot of little stuff. And when you have a team of, I think we're at 32 people now working here, with so many clients, you are going to, and it's just a big business, you're going to have all those little things that could really get to you. So I've had to learn to give that away and let it go. But the other thing is just, I think, understanding that you can't do it all. And my skill set, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. So filling in the gaps of what you're not good at has been something that I guess I've developed over the years, and surrounded myself with amazing people who know how to do things that I can't do as well. So that's been really helpful.
Energy and allocation of energy is such an important thing, and allocation of energy is a big thing for both your mind, your emotions, and then what you actually do in the day. Not sweating the small stuff is pivotal, because the bigger your business becomes, the more that you do as a high functioning person, There are 1,001 variables that will inevitably come up and distract you. And then it's about, do I let it bother me? Do I let it go? Do I allocate this to someone else? And
Not easy, is it?
yeah, because there's 100 things that are going to pop up in the day that'll take you away from where you need to be. So yeah, really, really good advice. And thank you for sharing that. 2 more questions for you. Now, this is a shameless plug for my book. You Won't Fuck It Up. Buying property is easier than you think. Tell us about a time that you've made a mistake in your life that has informed all of your decisions going forward. What's a mistake you made that from that moment onward, I'm never making that mistake?
So I don't have a specific moment, but I think where the mistakes I've made when I was younger, and it's both professionally and personally, it's the same. It's people and trusting your gut with people. So we have made as a business mistakes of hiring people who on paper sound fantastic. Even when we meet them, they're fantastic, but something in your gut says you shouldn't be hiring them. And then you bring them on and they cost the business a fortune. And the same can be said in my personal life, where you bring people into your life that are not the right fit for you and you don't trust your gut, and it does affect you. So what I've got now, a rule, I mean, in business, we do it when we hire new people. If it's a maybe, it's a no. So we will go through a round of interviews. If one person says maybe, we do not hire that person. That has served us extremely well. And it's just meant that the people that are coming on have a very similar mindset to us. And we are trusting our gut. And I do that in my personal life. I don't surround myself with anyone that doesn't make me feel good. The people around me are bucket fillers. They are connectors like me. The people who bring energy into a room, they're very positive. And I find that when you surround yourself with your tribe, you are just a much happier, more positive, more confident person. And the rest doesn't matter because you don't have that toxicity. So for me, I just follow my gut. And that's been really helpful.
Peter and I call it the no dickheads rule, but I like what you've said. If it's maybe, it's no, because that's actually more important. There's a lot of people out there. It's easy to say no to dickheads.
Yeah.
They're the obvious ones.
100%.
But maybe is a tough one because there's a lot of people that you'll be around and on paper, and there's a lot of things that tick boxes, but there's something not quite right.
Yeah.
And without being able to put your finger on it, it's hard to say no.
Yeah.
But if it's maybe, it's no. And Charlotte always says, if it's not fuck yes, then it's no. Which is
100%. That's another way of saying it if you want to swear. Yes.
Yeah.
If
I've
it's
got a
not
potty
a fuck
mouth.
yes, it's a no.
Yeah.
Over here at work, if it's a maybe, it's a no.
Yeah, no, I like that. If it's a maybe, it's a no. And it's again, as you said, about energy givers and takers. I like people that are happy to give and energy, full of energy, rather than trying to suck it out of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last question. What advice would you give to new investors and homeowners so they don't fuck up their next property purchase?
Oh, so much advice. No, I mean, ideally, look, we see this all the time. We'll have beautiful landlords come on, investors that have purchased not through us. We haven't sold it to them. And you know that they've bought a lemon, and you have to do your best with what you've got. But essentially, there's lots of things you can do. Obviously, if you are buying something that's new or off the plan, please use a builder and a developer that has a reputation, that's been around for a long time. The last thing you want is one that isn't going to be there by the time settlement comes, and 6 months down the track, you need to come back to them. We find that the developers we're working with, and I'm sure you are too, Dom, that they know what they're doing. They're going to be there for the defects. They're going to make sure that you get a product at the end of the day that is going to deliver on everything it's promised. So that's the first thing that I really recommend. If you are buying something that's established, don't buy anything that's got cladding on it. Please ask the questions. Please look into it. Cladding is causing a lot of issues in Victoria at the moment, and it's causing owners and the OC a lot of money to spend to remove the cladding, which is obviously flammable. Obviously, choose an area, like I mentioned, with amenities and infrastructure. I am a big fan of buying inner and central city. Do not go too far out where you need a car to get to anywhere. That's personally my advice. And the last thing is, if you are buying anything, get a building inspection and a defects report done. before you settle on it, so that you can make sure that you know what you're getting.
It felt like you were bursting at the seams and you had a whole list of things to
I
get.
did. I
And,
wrote down a list.
and look, for everyone out there, none of this is financial advice. We're real estate agents. We talk property. This is what we've seen and experienced. For financial advice, go see a financial planner.
Mm.
But you're absolutely right. If you're going to buy property that's new, you want to go with someone with a good reputation. If you're going to buy something that's old, make sure you go and get your building pest inspections done correctly. Cladding, fire-rated cladding is a problem everywhere, and especially in Melbourne. If you're going to buy apartments, make sure you go and get your strata reports, do all your due diligence. Go out there, buy, you won't fuck it up, because I cover all that stuff in the book as well. Nurit, thank you very much for your time today. You're a gem. You've built an amazing business, and everything you've told us today has been invaluable. I like your investment philosophy. There's a lot of good, helpful hints in there for purchases that are after that inner city, Melbourne, higher rental growth strategy. But I also think, that it's a good capital growth strategy too. Any passing thoughts before we wrap up the show?
No, I just wanted to thank you for your time. And if anyone ever wants to give me a call, have a chat, send me an email, then please pass on my details. I'm always happy to help, or even just to give some insights.
Absolutely. Well, happy investing, everybody. Happy house hunting, and we'll catch you all later. Bye-bye.